Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is the ultimate movie for any comic fan out there. Not only does it open up one of our favorite franchises to literally limitless future possibilities, but it has a fresh new story to tell. It's beautifully animated, features a fantastic cast of voices, and is packed to the brim with amazing references and Easter eggs. Some of these details might even surprise the biggest Spidey fans out there. But watch out! If you haven't seen the movie, there are some serious spoilers ahead. Sam Raimi References. It's almost impossible to ignore the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy when making any new versions. These movies, whether you love them or hate them, made a huge mark in the superhero movie genre and really kicked things off for our pal Peter Parker. You can't argue that they started strong too, as the first movie was a massive hit and remains one to this day. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse does an amazing job of paying homage to this super famous trilogy through the blonde version of Spider-Man who appears in the movie. They even considered casting Tobey Maguire as one of the older versions. And while the roles went to Jake Johnson and Chris Pine, they made sure to give Tobey his due. When the opening Spidey, voiced by Chris Pine, relays his over a decade-long history as the web-slinging hero, they throw in some perfect nods to Tobey Maguire's turn in the role. We see him using his webs to slow down a speeding train, like Tobey famously did in Spider-Man 2, and having his date with Mary Jane rudely interrupted by a car crashing through the side of the restaurant. We also get the upside-down kiss heard round the world, and perhaps best of all, the too good to be true dance moves from Spider-Man 3. Ben Reilly. Some details in this movie are such obscure references that they just might pass you by if you aren't a huge fan of both the movies and the comic books. And if you're not a super fan, you might just wind up a little bit lost. Like the moment when Chris Pine's Spider-Man has his mask taken off when he is defeated, only to reveal a head of blonde hair, which seems weird because Peter Parker has never been pictured as a blonde before. But actually, there is more going on there than meets the eye. Earlier in the movie, when the time-hardened Peter B. Parker sees the blonde Chris Pine Peter Parker up on a billboard, you can tell instantly that they look very similar. Could it be that this Spider-Man is actually Ben Reilly, one of Spider-Man's clones from the comic books? In a story about a multiverse where anything is possible, this actually makes a ton of sense. And guess what color hair Ben Reilly had in the comics? You got it. He's a blonde. He was a huge fan favorite, and the creators of this movie being diehard Spidey fans themselves, this scenario seems more than likely. Spider food. Studios know when fans fall in love with a character. They will go crazy for all kinds of merchandise based off of that character. There's been Spider-Man themed everything you can think of, from backpacks to toothbrushes to bedspreads and action figures and umbrellas. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse takes one hilarious chance to poke a little bit of fun at exactly that. Back in '95, right in the middle of the hype for the original cartoon series Spider-Man the Animated Series, fans were going nuts for the web slinger, and companies jumped at the chance to get in on the action. There's an awesome scene early on in the movie when Spider-Man is boasting about how he has been a breakfast cereal. SpiderMan Cereal was released in 1995. In the movie, he also references the famous Spider-Man popsicle that, if you've ever endangered your life by running out into traffic to chase down an ice cream truck, you have definitely seen. Those gumball eyes are definitely a highlight, even if it becomes terrifying to look at as it melts. Donald Glover. When we found out Marvel would be bringing back Peter Parker with The Amazing Spider-Man, and before the role went to Andrew Garfield, Donald Glover made it known that he was very interested in playing the role himself. Fans went crazy for the idea and started the Twitter campaign #DonaldForSpiderMan, which blew up. While he didn't end up getting the part, which in retrospect might have been a good thing, he was asked to voice Miles Morales in the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, and also had a brief appearance in Spider-Man Homecoming as Aaron Davis. Donald even threw an amazing reference to the entire social media storm into an episode of Community. In it, we see his character Troy get out of bed in full Spider-Man pajamas. Well, this didn't go unnoticed by the creators of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, as they honor the entire thing in one amazing moment that is sure to make both Donald and all of his friends seriously happy. As Miles is walking into his uncle's apartment, if you look very closely in the background, you'll notice that the very scene from Community is playing on TV. It is the perfect hidden detail that proves just how much the minds behind the movie love our pal Spidey. Memes. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is very much a movie of its own time. With its hyper-awareness of modern pop culture, i.e. references to Shaun of the Dead on a billboard that reads From Dusk to Dawn, and images of Blake Griffin playing baseball and Steph Curry playing golf, the creators really cement us in the 2010s, even if it's a slightly alternate version of our universe. And they know Spider-Man has become something of an internet sensation. More specifically, that screenshots from the Spider-Man cartoon series from the late 1960s have become some of the best and most famous memes out there. One in particular has been a favorite, and it features Spider-Man sitting behind a desk with his own face framed on the wall behind him and his hands suspiciously hidden. In Into the Spider-Verse, they make more than one allusion to this meme, once in the offices of Alchemax and later during the credits. The CCA. Only absolute superfans might recognize a very particular stamp at the beginning of the movie, right after the Marvel logo disappears, stating the film has been approved by the Comics Code Authority. If you've ever held one of the comics in your hands issued before 2001, you probably know the stamp was displayed on the cover of every issue. Back in the day, before Eminem, first-person shooter games, and before Eli Roth had ever made a movie, a psychologist named Frederick Wortham sparked a campaign suggesting comic books were the root cause of delinquency and bad behavior in minors. This led to a series of Senate hearings, which caused the creators of comics to develop the Comics Code Authority, which ensured the parents buying children these comics there was only wholesome material within. This meant they wouldn't produce any comics involving drug use, horror, monsters, yes, monsters, and any gore. This lasted until Stan Lee himself wrote a comic that showed Harry Osborn taking LSD. And when the CCA wouldn't approve it, he just went ahead and took the seal off the front of his comics and published them anyway. Stan Lee answers only to Stan Lee, and that's why he'll always be a legend. Spider-Man. In a movie that features every kind of Spider-Man from every possible universe you could ever imagine, it might lead some to wonder who the real Spider-Man is. So, which one is it? Well, as unlikely as it may seem, it's actually Peter B. Parker, the grumpy, scruffy, world-wearied version of Spider-Man, voiced by Jake Johnson. It's not how we imagined the lovable Peter Parker would grow up, but hey, life is hard, especially for superheroes. This is confirmed in the movie in one pivotal moment, when Kingpin destroys the universes of Gwen, Miles, Spider-Ham, Peter B. Parker, and Spider-Man Noir. We see on the computer monitor the names of the universes that each of them belong to. In the comics, each universe has a different number assigned to it. 1610 is Ultimate Marvel, where Miles comes from. 90214 is Marvel Noir, home of Spider-Man Noir, of course. Peter B. Parker belongs to 616, which is known as Marvel Prime, or the main Marvel universe, proving, without a doubt, he is the original Spider-Man. Back in time. Not only did the creators of the film reference just about every current Spider-Man iteration, meme, fan, comic, side character, and everything else they possibly could, they waited until the very, very end to bring it right back to where it started, which, hilariously, is the 1960s animated series that has become a huge internet sensation. In the post-credits scene, Miguel tells Lila to send him back to where it all began, and he ends up plopped down in the middle of the animated series. It could not be more perfect. And then the best thing happens. Miguel runs into another Spider-Man, and they recreate the most popular Spider-Man meme of all time. The two Spideys pointing at each other. It is a total gift to the fans. Absolutely hilarious. And really solidifies that the guys who made this movie know exactly who they made it for. We don't know what the plot of the sequel will be. Even though it hasn't been announced yet, there will most definitely be a sequel, hopefully 5. But if it is anything like this post-credits scene, we will be buying our tickets as soon as humanly possible. $20.99. We've learned by now, never, ever leave a Marvel movie until the credits have finished rolling. Those who do are guaranteed to miss out on something amazing one way or another, whether it's a hint of what is to come or just something absolutely hilarious that you just need to see. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is no different. The post-credits scene in this movie is a whopper and has so much juicy stuff for fans to sink their teeth into. Starting with Spider-Man 2099, who you might not realize was voiced by none other than Oscar Isaac. While his last turn in a comic book movie didn't go so well, sorry Apocalypse, it seems like he's back and better than ever. But who is Spider-Man 2099? When he's not fighting crimes, he goes by the name Miguel O'Hara, who is a very popular Latin future version of Spidey from the year 2099. We also got to meet his AI sidekick, Lila, and funnily enough, these two were listed in the credits as only interesting person number 1 and 2. It's one of the best post-credits ever, and is stirring up a ton of questions about what the makers of this film are planning in the future. Hopefully we find out before 2099. Stan Lee. After the recent passing of Stan Lee, fans of the comics and the movies alike mourned the loss of one of their heroes, and one of the greatest storytellers of all time. One of the saddest things about his death has been the realization that Stan wouldn't be able to make his infamous cameos anymore, and it's been agreed that Marvel movies won't be the same without him. And yet, even though he wouldn't be able to see the final product, Stan's involvement in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was actually more important than any other movie so far. When Chris Miller and Phil Lord were writing the script, they knew that they wanted to include a Stan cameo that was a little more than usual. And so, they came up with the idea to have him become the owner of a costume shop, who actually gives Miles his costume and sends him along his path. According to Miller and Lord, Stan loved the design of his animation, and was more than happy to be involved, along with being hugely supportive of the project. Even though he may not be with us anymore, Stan Lee's voice will live on forever through the universe. No, wait, the multiverse that he helped create. If you're not rushing out to the theater to watch this movie again right now, what are you even doing with your life? Did you love this movie as much as we did? And did you catch any amazing references that we might have missed? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.